Now that we've learned a little bit about the interior of Earth, we're going to take maybe a little bit of a history lesson. And the scientist that we get to credit this history lesson to is named Alfred Wegener, or probably Wagner, since he's from Germany. And he was actually a meteorologist. And he thought that the continents were once all joined together in what he called a supercontinent. And he named the supercontinent Pangaea. And this image right here is a picture of what he thought Pangaea would look like. And you can kind of see that the continents all kind of pieced together like a jagged puzzle. And he suggested that Pangaea broke up into the continents we know today a long time ago. And he called this continental drift. And this is a hypothesis developed in the early 20th century that states that the continents move about on Earth's surface. And so he had kind of 4 areas of evidence: the rocks and geologic structures, fossils, glaciation, and climate. And this 5th evidence came about after Wegener passed away. So we're going to take a look at all 5 of these evidences for continental drift. So the first one, the rocks and geologic structures. What he discovered was that he found rocks of the same type and age on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. And he hypothesized that the rocks formed side by side, and then when the continents separated, the rocks also drifted apart. He was able to match up mountain ranges across the Atlantic Ocean, which is what your picture is showing. So the Appalachian Mountains are in the eastern United States, and he said that those mountains had so much in common with mountains in Greenland, up here, in Ireland, over here, Great Britain, up here, and in Norway. Or sorry, that was probably up here. And so his conclusion was that once upon a time they formed as a single mountain range, and then that mountain range broke apart as the continents split apart. The second evidence for evolution would be plants fossils and animal fossils. And what he found was that the same type of plant and animal fossils are found on continents that are now widely separated. And this might not sound like a big deal because you could think, oh, these animals could just swim, or the seeds from these plants could just be carried by the wind. But the example of the fossils he found, the evidence in these fossils suggests that these animals couldn't swim. The seeds would maybe be too heavy to be picked up by the wind. And so his conclusion was that all of these organisms lived side by side, but then they got separated as the lands moved apart. So a couple example fossils. We have a fern seed called Glossopteris, and that's found across all of the southern continents. And here we had a case of the seeds being too heavy to be carried across the ocean by the wind. A Mesosaurus fossil, they're found in South America and South Africa. These animals could swim, but they only lived in fresh water. And then the last example, the Cyanogathus and Lystrosaurus were reptiles that lived on land. They had no ability to swim, and these fossils are found across South America, Africa, India, and Antarctica. So here's an example of where these fossils are found. So the Cyanogathus, its fossils are found in this tan band, which spans across South America and Africa. And you can see how the two continents kind of piece together. Same with the fern seeds in green, the Glossopteris. You can see where the fern seeds been spread in green. The Mesosaurus was that freshwater reptile, and you can see where its fossils have been found. And so one of the logical explanations was that these continents were once joined, where the animals could travel across the continents by walking. And then as the continents slowly drifted apart, those organisms obviously died and became fossils. The third evidence would be evidence from glaciers. And glaciers are found in very cold climates. They're made up of ice and snow. And he found climates, and they're made near the poles because, well, that's where it's coldest. And he found evidence left by some ancient glaciers very close to the equator. And we should know that the climate near the equator is nice and toasty warm. So his conclusion was that if the continents had moved, the glaciers would have been centered close to the South Pole, like we see in the picture here. This would have been near the South Pole. And as those continents moved apart, these areas are now near the equator. And so the glaciers would have melted, but still would have left evidence that glaciers had once existed there. The last example here that Wagner had was the climate. So coral reefs are only found in warm water. Same with coal swamps where coal is made. And what he found was that ancient coal and coral reef fossils are in areas that are way too cold today. So his conclusion again supported that the continents moved. So these little palm tree symbols show where there would have been coal swamps, and those areas are just too chilly nowadays to support that kind of growth. And same, we can see the glaciers showing up again. And so this supports Wagner's idea that the continents could move. So the last evidence is magnetic evidence, and this was discovered after Wagner passed away. So Earth's magnetic field surrounds the Earth from pole to pole. And what happens is when some rocks form, if they have iron in them, they can form little compasses. And those little compasses will line up to match the magnetic field. So north points to north or whatever. So this points to where the North Pole was when that lava cooled and those crystals got locked into place. So scientists can use this information to help figure out where the continents were at that time when the rock formed. And so what they found is that those rocks had to have moved. So during Wagner's time, scientists did not know that the continents could move. So Wagner's idea seemed really preposterous and really far-fetched, so it was mostly rejected and forgotten. He really thought, he was pretty sure that continents could move. He couldn't explain how they moved. So the big question now was, how did the continents move? And we will save the answer to that for another video.